Frank Corrado is a former Vancouver Canuck and a TSN hockey analyst, and he joins us now from his home. How are you?
I'm good, boys. What's going on?
Have you ever played with a funnier tandem of goaltenders than Roberto Luongo and Corey Schneider?
Well, I was with those two for such a short period of time, and I'm pretty sure like my existence in the dressing room at that point was to just not be seen or heard or anything. So maybe
that's a good spot to watch them though. Sometimes,
yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, just stay as far away from anyone as humanly possible. But Corey Schneider was. I think I've told this story a few times. Kind of cool. Like after my first game, when I went to go do the goalie taps, he had the puck in his glove and he opened it and he goes, "This is for you." Like that was really cool, really awesome. But yeah, they're man.
We were just
golden era
by,
of goaltending in Vancouver there.
Well, we were just struck because, Corey's there working for NHL Network and he's interviewing Roberto amidst the Stanley Cup celebration. And we were sitting there thinking, oh, this should have been 2011.
Brad Marchand is on the ice.
Well, that's what's weirder, seeing Corey and Lou do an interview together or seeing Lou and Marshy like hugging.
Oh,
amazing.
Yeah.
No, not amazing. No,
amazing
in a weird way. It's amazing
in a clinical sense. Like,
yes.
It's truly amazing that happened.
Yeah,
it's a would you look at that? Like,
yeah,
who would have thought?
Happy for Roberto though. Wasn't able. It's so competitive. Wasn't able to win it as a player. I'm glad to see him get to partake in all this because he's a legend of the game, both on the ice and on social media.
Are you surprised how the last couple of games went in the Cup final, Frank, given that Edmonton looked like they had some extra wisdom this year and ultimately it's one fewer games that they lost?
I'll say this. If you asked me, at the start of the series, if I would have been surprised by that, I would say yes, because I would have thought that if you get late in the series, this is the McDavid time. This is the McDavid moment where we saw it last year in Game 7 after he was piping hot, for Games 4 and 5, basically went, quiet for Game 7, nothing. For Game 6, nothing. And then nothing in Game 7. And I'm like, well, it can't happen 2 years in a row to the guy that's the best player in the world. But sure enough, here we are. It basically did happen 2 years in a row. And I guess I'm not surprised that the last two games went the way they did because of watching the way Florida basically dismantle everyone en route to winning another Stanley Cup. And the only series that ends up going 7 is the one against Toronto. So you can't call it a dismantling, but you can say that they pounded them in games 5 and 7 to the point where like you forgot that series was actually close and Toronto was in the lead at some point. So given the fact that Florida was so efficient and clinical and got better and better as things went along, I'm not surprised. I guess I'm surprised that it wasn't the best player and essentially second best player in the world having that you can't stop us moment.
What is the lesson of the Florida Panthers in terms of building a cup winner?
The lesson of the Florida Panthers, I think there's not just one lesson. I think there's a few things to be learned here as far as how they've built their team. They've been very diligent with how they've structured things with the salary cap. And I know everyone wants to get into the state tax thing, but back in 2019, they had to try and lure Sergei Bobrovsky to that team. And $10 million for a goaltender who 3 years ago, they probably would have been willing to get out of that contract, maybe, with the way things were going. That wasn't the no state tax discount. They had to be the highest bidder to get Bob, and they got him. So now that they've built this thing, they've built a team that all the roles are so defined and perfect for all the players involved. Like, yeah, they're a deep team. Sure, that's surface level stuff. But they're not asking their third line left winger to do more than he can. If anything, he's probably capable of more, but they're just asking him to do what he does and what he does well. And that's, that's where if you look at all the teams that have kind of come and gone here this year, as far as the playoff picture, and you look no further than the Edmonton Oilers, right? You had so many guys coming in and out of the lineup, and capping and switching out for Arvidsson and Stetcher and Klingberg and all these things, and it's like the Florida Panthers, they don't do that stuff. Going into Game 7, the Edmonton Oilers had used 25 different line combinations. The Florida Panthers had used 8. You know what that tells me? Everything's set in stone with Florida. And in Edmonton, it's just a lot, it's the two best players and a lot of moving parts, and you don't have Zach Hyman, and I get it. But as much as they're a deep team, physical team, well-coached team, the roles for the players are perfect in Florida.
We started having this conversation in full when Travis Green became the coach of the Canucks. So what is that, 8 years ago or so, something like that, 7, 8 years ago, that the league was moving away from a defined top 6 and bottom 6. And it was more a top 9 and then get by with your fourth line.
Yeah.
When I've watched Florida over the last 2 years, I have seen 9 terrific two-way hockey players in their forward group. And I think that more than anything probably stands out as a recipe and a formula.
Yeah. And they have, give them credit because they've been aggressive as far as pursuing whoever the big fish is at the time, right? Whether it was Matthew Tkachuk or it was Sam Bennett, who, got traded for essentially not much. Sam Reinhart, like Seth Jones. They've nailed grabbing the big guy. And they've also nailed these, ones on the periphery of things, right? Like Luostarinen, pretty sure that was a guy they got in the Vincent Trocheck trade. That's Gus Forsling is a waiver pickup. They've made these really astute decisions on these guys and given them opportunities. And sure enough, look what it's done for them. And I'm kind of thinking back now at players that played for the Panthers in the last 7 or 8 years that are no longer there. And I was like, well, Vinny Trocheck was a Panther. Riley Smith was a Panther. Jonathan Marchessault was a Panther. Then you're like, we've never talked about any of that. We didn't talk about, we talked about the guys that went to Vegas because Vegas had success. But now it's such an afterthought because of how they've gone about replacing those players. And I don't know, man. It takes some stones to be a general manager who will take swings for sure. It also takes a really smart department, and they have that. And
I don't want to get too
active again.
I don't want to get too deep into the state tax weeds here, but they traded for a lot of their top end talent. The most of their difference makers were traded for, including even the contracts that they're currently on, were actually signed by other GMs where the state tax obviously wasn't a consideration. But when you consider Reinhart, Tkachuk, Marchand, Bennett, Seth Jones, all these players were, not signed to a Florida contract, but they were acquired via a trade. They have no draft picks, no top-end draft picks, really to speak of for the next 4 years, saying nothing of the years that have gone past already. I mean, this is some savvy trading, if nothing else. They have traded their way to a cup.
And you know what? They could care less about the draft picks. That goes without saying. But the scary thing is, if you looked at the Eastern Conference right now, and you could pick, the top 8 teams and maybe a couple more, do any of those teams, if you're Florida, do any of those teams scare you as far as that could be the team that knocks us off? I don't think so. I think you'd be foolish to think that there's a team that's just waiting to knock off Florida with the way that they dismantled everyone. And, as far as what they're going to do now here in free agency, they've got about $19 million to spend, and they don't have to get to a 23-man roster. You don't have to carry 23. So they could try and get creative here and bring back, Bill Zito was talking about it after the game. We want to bring them back all 3, and I think we can do it. And it's maybe you can, but even if you can't, and you bring back 2 guys, and let's just say for argument's sake, it's Bennett and Ekblad, the guys that are up that you would lose, that you have to replace, are all league minimum type guys. It's Noshik, Nico Sturm, It's like Nate Schmidt,
Yeah.
the Lundells, the Luosterainens of the world,
Not going anywhere.
the Kulikovs, the Mikolas, they're all there and they're on term, not going anywhere. So, they're in a really, really good spot in their ability to get back there, which is crazy to even talk about at this point.
Well, they lost players from last year to this. Like Ekman Larson went on, moved on. They just replaced guys at that level, right?
Brandon Montour moved on, right?
Yeah,
and eventually they found their replacement. It wasn't right away, but eventually they got the replacement.
Mackie Samoskevich, the only Florida Panther from the last 4 drafts to play NHL games. He's an RFA too, part of their offseason biz. But, I mean, the other thing we should say, Frank, and we used to talk about this a lot in this market because the owner's refusal to rebuild, we now just sort of take that as a matter of course. And there's a first overall in Ekblad, there's a second overall in Barkov on the team. This is yet another Stanley Cup champion that had to sink to the bottom and get high top 5 picks, hit on those picks to bounce back up. That is still an NHL format. It doesn't guarantee a cup, but you look at cup winners, they tend to have top 5 picks on them.
Yeah.
And indigenous draft picks, not just guys they've acquired via trade.
But a lot of teams have those guys too, Matt, and they don't have the success. So it's about making the right choice at those picks
that's
too.
it.
I mean,
that's what I said.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Here
blow
closer
those
to home.
picks.
Closer to home for me, Toronto's got a first overall pick. They've got a 4th overall pick. They've got a 7th, what was it, Nylander, 6th or 7th overall pick, right? Like they've got they've got it too. It's just here's the Florida Panthers for you. You guys watched them pass the Stanley Cup to Nate Schmidt, then you thought, okay, that's pretty cool, veteran guy. That's a nice gesture. And then you saw Nate Schmidt hand it off to another guy. Was it Seth Jones? And then Seth Jones handed it off to another guy who was like can't remember who it was. But then you started to get the feeling. You're like, wait a second, it's all the first timers that are getting the cup. Yeah. And not only is it all the first timers, it's guys that didn't even play games. Like I'm watching the third goalie carry the cup before like the regulars, the core guys got it, and then they all had the same sentiments in their interviews with Gene afterwards. And you're like, well, they didn't have earpieces in. Like Evan Rodriguez doesn't know what Bennett's saying, doesn't know what Reinhardt's saying, but these guys are truly on the same page in unison. And teams talk about how special of a group they are and how close they are. But then to see that happen, that was truly remarkable. And I guess the reason why I bring that up is you can have the first overall pick and you can have, the bottoming out, and it's great and you have the talent. But to have what they have right there, that's a different level. That, yes, you need the talent, but that's culture. People throw that word around, that's culture. Like I've seen guys, it's hard. The hierarchy exists in hockey. Like you could be at the pregame meal buffet and guys will go like 15 years in the league. That's my piece of chicken. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, these guys are letting the secondary and third layer of players hoist the Stanley Cup before them, and they're more excited for them than their own selves. I mean, that's what really separates the Florida Panthers as much as having some high picks on their roster too.
Brad Marchand made himself a ton of money here. Another contract late in his career, which is crazy. But the contract that I think everybody's curious about now in the wake is actually on the losing side of things, and that is for number 97. Does this change anything? We talked about this with, I think, John Shannon earlier in the week, who was of the mind, hey, Draisaitl's signed there. That seals the deal for McDavid to make sure that he signs. Is there any chance that these back-to-back losses changes that equation in your mind?
I don't know if it changes things. If anything, maybe it makes him hungrier to kind of finish up what they started in Edmonton. Yeah. I don't know if he would ever see it as like not quitting, because he's not. But just to finish out what you set to do. As far as the contract goes, I know Draisaitl's there for a long time now. there's nothing saying that McDavid has to sign an 8-year deal.
No.
The cap's going up so much. He
That's
could
right.
take a page out of the Matthews playbook here and say, guys, I'm going to do a 4-year deal, and we're going to give this a really honest shot here. That's basically 5 more years of trying as an Edmonton Oiler, brings him to age 33, right? 32,
Yep.
33. Then you're going to sign your next ticket till you're 40, and no one will ever fault you if you left at that point because you gave it enough of a shot in Edmonton. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
I go shorter if I was him. I go 3 years. I go 3 years.
Yeah, and you know what? The money's still going to be there for you because you're the best player in the world. And at that point, even if you're a top 3 player in the world, like the cap is going up so much in that time that you're going to get paid an astronomical amount of money.
Are you done talking Cup with him?
Yes,
Okay,
sure.
I would like to move on to the Vancouver Canucks, Frank.
They did not make the Cup.
No.
It's a local show, guys. Local show.
They
Local,
haven't made the-
national.
They had made a Cup. It's just the wrong Cup. The
Yeah,
Calder.
in
Yeah.
fact, they haven't made a Cup since waiving Frank Corrado
yes,
all those
that's
years
true.
ago. So, Alexei,
It's cruel.
Hey, when Frank was there, they were a contender.
Then right.
Frank
Yeah,
left,
I
and then
wasn't the
suddenly
reason
they were
why.
a ticket.
I was a spectator, but that's okay.
Correlation, causation. You
Yeah.
choose. Alexei Lafreniere with the Rangers. How daunted would you be about that $7+ million contract that's going to kick in for a first overall? Took another step back last year, but has shown flashes of being an NHL scorer. And do you think, like, because of the contract, he might be attainable at a reasonable trade cost?
So I feel like it's hard to get a sense of in New York last year if players truly took a step back individually or if that was just a byproduct of the team environment and everything that was going on around them. You know, he's still only 23 years old. 2 years ago, he had a really strong season, and it looked like he was really tracking in the right direction. And like we've talked about this before, not every first overall pick is built the same, right? Like that, not everyone's a McDavid who turns around your franchise right away. Some guys are just good players who happen to be selected first overall, and that might be what Lafreniere is. And you know, for how long is left on this deal? So the 7 years that's going to start here, it feels like that cap hit is going to get more and more digestible as the cap goes up. And as a 23-year-old player, is he going to get better and better, especially if, you know, whatever team he's playing on, whether it's the Rangers or if he does get moved, it's a better situation than what was happening there this year, where it just sounds like and feels like, you know, everything kind of went wrong for everyone involved, including their goaltender, who's one of the best in the world. So I would be more on the optimistic side of Lafreniere and the contract and what he can be, rather than thinking at 23, you know, he took a step back and it's doomed to just be what he was last year, you know, a 40, 50 point guy, you know, with a lot of money being owed to him. I can't say that based on the year the Rangers had and how it affected everyone.
Yeah. Then to Anaheim, where there was a report yesterday about Troy Terry being available. And, of course, there's also the Zegras factor there into the final year of his deal at 5.75. What do you think of Terry and Zegras?
So Troy Terry's a really good player. Like he's their best forward. He's the best forward on the team. So I can't understand why he would just be out there and available. And maybe he is, because you look at it and you say, this is the guy that's going to fetch us the most, or something that can change our group. But I'm not necessarily sure the Ducks need change at this point. They just need to take another step forward. Like they kind of just need the veteran insulation that they're they're bringing in right now. And say what you want about Chris Kreider, but he's a veteran guy like Alex Killorn, another guy that these guys can lean on. Ryan Strome, same type of deal. Even Jacob Trouba, whatever you think of his game, where he's at, like it goes a long way for young players having having those sounding boards as far as the veterans around them. The Zegras thing. The Zegras thing I find more interesting because 24 years old, I think he's around or just under $6 million, and he's going to have arbitration coming up like the year after next. But his ARB case, like unless he has a monster year, his ARB case is not going to be very strong. And I feel like the return for Zegras at this point is not going to be very high. So, do you keep him and take your chances that there's still, because he's a young guy, there's still something there, or do you kind of say maybe it's best for him to move on and we're gonna try with someone else? But with the new coach coming in, like I don't think Zegras was ever going to be a Greg Cronin guy, and I don't think a lot of guys would have been Greg Cronin guys from the sounds of it. Can Joel Quenneville get more out of Trevor Zegras? Like I would want to see. Before I make these types of decisions, I'd want to see what all my guys look like with the new coach first.
And playing with Captain America, if you will, and Quinn Hughes, you wonder if Zegras would find his maturity a little bit quicker, and think about yesteryear and playing with him. And they know each other well. He's a little bit better buddies with Jack as Trevor, but I mean, you can imagine that there's something there if they became teammates.
Yeah. It's just, I guess the Zegras thing is when he was at his best, he was such an exciting player to watch, right? Like for whatever you thought about the Michigan and stuff, like there was an excitement level to watching Zegras. I don't think that's there anymore, and I wonder if Quenneville can bring that back, because at the very least he could be, hey man, not everyone has to be Sam Reinhart, not everyone has to be Bennett, but some guys can work in certain situations if they're just really, really good at one thing. So maybe he can be really, really good at being creative and a playmaker and exciting again. And surrounded by the right guys, maybe you live with the warts. But I think first and foremost, get back to your strengths and get back to what was going to or is going to make you a good player, and then figure the rest out from there.
Frank, you'll be with TSN on July 1st, free agent frenzy, working the big board there of all the different contracts. And I know you'll be prepping for all their valuations heading into Canada Day. We will catch up next week, talk some draft and talk more free agency.
Looking forward to it, boys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for this.
Thank you, guys.